I don't know what's up with producers, but for some reason they just feel like the only thing people want to see in a movie is just something cool. Explosions. I'm like, no, I don't. I almost fell asleep. I think it was like back in the day when people used to watch Transformers.
Oh man,
I know, dude. Welcome back to the Marty and Jaden show. I'm Marty and this is Jaden. We just finished reading The Alloy of Law this week. We are looking forward to Dune coming out later this month.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Very excited about that.
Opening night, we're going to be there. A lot to talk about today. Also, I have a theory about Dune that I want to talk through with you.
I know. I've been waiting to hear about this. He mentioned it last week to me.
We didn't have enough time, though.
He didn't even tell me after the shot.
No,
with the
it has to be on the podcast, just like Alloy of Law. We have not mentioned anything about it to each other this entire week, pending this discussion, this podcast-style discussion. So
we had to have you here for it.
Just for you guys. Yeah. So appreciate that, yes. The patience on our part.
And then at the end of the podcast, or somewhere in between, we may also jump into my experience with Oppenheimer.
Oh, yeah. That was the first... So you watched it for the first time this week. I've never even seen it.
I know.
So
it's funny, too, because Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors of all time. And so I had to check it out. And I finally got to it this weekend, even though it's quite a bit late. But not before not after the Oscars, though. So still may win Best Picture.
What is that? Is that coming up?
It's coming up in like a month or two.
Oh,
the nominations just came out. So.
Oh, yes. That was an interesting... I know. Plenty of news there. Okay. I do want to dive into Alloy of Law, though. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
Because this is the first time I've gone back into Mistborn since I first read it. Which is forever ago.
Yeah, it was like, so your first experience with Brandon Sanderson was the original Mistborn trilogy.
Yes, the first three.
As was mine. Then I went through and read The Way of Kings, and then came through and read Mistborn Era 2, starting with Alloy of Law. You hadn't gotten there, though, until this point.
Have you read all four of the Wax and Wayne series? Yeah. So Wax and Wayne, first of all, I didn't know was the main characters' names until now. Because like Wax and Wayne is something you say. It kind of makes sense. It's like a
moon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But I loved it. I thought it was... So the first time you explained it to me, right when we were starting this whole podcast, you were talking about the second era series, and you said it's like Batman meets Sherlock Holmes. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And I honestly, there's a lot of people who have problems with the series because like it's not as deep and as good as Mistborn. But for me, I think it's just a ton of fun. I loved the original Mistborn series for how deep it is. But this is a breath of fresh air after having read all the Way of Kings books and having read the Mistborn books. It's nice to have something that's a little bit more playful. Yeah. And it is just perfect. I think it's the perfect description to say this is a blend of Sherlock Holmes and Batman. I don't know if you felt the same way.
I did. And I even wrote that down in my notes because like you're 100% right.
Yes.
It's really, he's rich. He's got the stuff going on and he's a vigilante behind the scenes. Yes.
And he's a genius. He's like doing the science and everything too.
I think it's awesome. He has a sidekick friend who's basically immortal. I do think, okay, one thing about it is, and like you mentioned, it's not as deep as the original Mistborn series. It's not as deep as Way of Kings. Yeah. And that's true. It was a fun, almost like a side adventure. It's cool to meet new people and learn kind of the Allomantic system, but also with guns and trains.
Yeah,
and stuff.
How cool is that?
And they're starting to build cars and all those things. It was really cool. But I will say that I called the final scene like 6 chapters early.
No way!
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Because she's like, oh, my power can't do anything. I'm like, okay, well, now I got to stop and think about it. What can you do with this power?
Okay, pause for a minute. We're going to have a ton of spoilers for this book throughout. Wow. Just so you know, we may put in some chapters so you can skip ahead if you haven't read this book, but that's your warning.
That's probably the best pause timing ever. Because I almost spoiled everything.
I know, but I want to know. So there were 2 things that I was wondering. We'll get back to what you're talking about with Marcy. Actually, just go for it. So tell me about that part. I want to know.
So as soon as I heard that she's a lurcher, right? So she is able to slow down time for herself.
I guess a lurcher? I think lurcher is the one where you pull metals and so you go towards it, like you're lurching towards it.
Okay, so her Allomantic ability, right, is that she can slow down time for herself.
I can't remember what
it is. And within a bubble, it's
Augmenter?
I don't know.
Yeah, Augur.
Really?
I can't remember.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait for comments on that one.
No, maybe Augur was the one about the health. And no, that was the gold. That was gold.
The gold's a blood maker.
Yeah, but the gold is like when you see yourself as well. Like that's called like an augur.
Okay, yeah.
I can't remember.
Well, you've also read more of it than me, so I'm not gonna try and say that I know what's going on here. But what she can do is she can slow down time for herself and with the space of a small room. And I'm like, what kind of person gives a detail of, oh, I can probably extend it to about a small room? I'm like, yeah, well, she's going to.
I know the classic.
That's the most obvious. And then I was like, oh, it's totally useless. I can't do anything with it. I'm like, okay, well, I had to stop and think about what can you do with that power. I'm like, well, you can slow down the action right in front of you so that stuff can happen around you that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Or like people can catch up or people can evade or heal or whatever they need to do outside while the threat on the inside is slow. So she can directively slow things. Where like for Wayne, he's limited by the fact that he can only speed up one thing at a time, like one small bubble, where she's able to slow down. So the inverse, a much larger area. So I'm like,
yep.
At the end of the day, they're just going to have to slow down the biggest threat and then get a bunch of like army around them afterwards.
You predicted that exact thing.
I didn't know it was going to be like the police or something. I thought it was going to be more
But you said like get an army around them and everything. That's what you were thinking?
I thought they were going to like build their whole group and have their like, anyway, I was pretty confident. I was super confident. So when it started to happen and then they're like, oh, I didn't want to put her in harm's way, but now I'm going to have to. I'm like, oh, plan B is definitely going to be her slowing down.
Oh my gosh.
It's like when it got to that point, when he did say like, oh, we had to go to plan B and I didn't want to put her in danger. I'm like, okay, well, it's at that point it's completely.
So were you
obvious.
Disappointed by that?
I wasn't completely
you seem
disappointed
the way you're talking about it.
I wish there had been some sort of twist. I don't like predicting it exactly, and I feel like that was way too close to exactly.
Honestly, Jaden, I think that's pretty dang impressive. I did not see that coming at all.
I do think about this a lot more, knowing that we're going to have this conversation on the podcast. So I try to think through things while I'm reading instead of just going along for the journey, which maybe I should.
Oh, it's fine.
But it's sometimes fun to analyze it without waiting for it to happen.
Here's the other part though. Did you predict how the Vanishers were doing there?
No, I did not predict that.
And how cool is that?
That was something, and I was like, man, that's wild. I really am curious what's going on there. I thought it was going to be some Almantic ability that I just didn't know of.
Yep.
But it was like a transport almost ability. Yep. But no, they're just like, we just straight up steal the train and then rip it apart.
Yeah, I know. And you put in a duplicate.
Yeah.
So it looks like you pulled off the...
It looks like it was completely empty, but you just stole the train.
Yeah. Which is such a... I don't know. I thought that was a brilliant way of doing it.
Pretty cool.
And I thought it was really cool. I didn't see that one coming either. My brother, when he read this book, predicted that.
No
He
way.
figured that one out.
That's...
I know.
Okay.
I know.
What about... one of the bigger surprises for me in the book was the butler. Did not see that coming.
Oh, that was also
That
huge.
was a complete surprise to me.
Honestly, I've read the book and that would surprise me again.
And the way that they did it, I loved.
It was funny because I couldn't remember if that scene, like, did this happen in this book or a later book? Like, I'm pretty sure this butler blows him up at some point.
First of all, every time they said Tiom, I was like, Tien?
Tien? Yes, I thought that every single time.
I'm like, wait, well, okay, no, it's not him.
I read about this character recently.
I'm like, I kind of like him. I don't know why. But
he makes really good tea. It tastes like awakening and mint.
He's a connoisseur of tea.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely a surprise when that happened. But it was also, I was saying I really liked how it happened because Wayne was like, oh, tea's poisoned. Just collapses. Wayne is the best. Okay. And I was trying to figure out on the cover, that's actually something I want to talk about. The cover makes it look like Wax is the one with the gun and Wayne is the other one because Wax uses guns, right? But it's the other way around. The cover is very confusing.
No, wait. No, I think you're wrong. So the cover definitely is Wax. He's the one who has goggles around his neck.
Yeah, but Wayne is the one with the gun, which is very confusing. That's why I say that. Because when you first start reading the book...
Oh my gosh, you're right. He's holding a gun in there.
That's what I'm saying. He hates guns. He doesn't have any dueling canes in that picture.
I am so disappointed.
The person who drew that cover read the first 6 chapters. Because early on, first of all, I thought that was Wax the shorter one and Wayne was the taller one when I first started the book.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at this cover every time I read the audiobook. And then when I went and they're like, oh, Wax is taller. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, and like he's wearing a hat. Wayne loves wearing hats. Yes. I'm like, why does he have a gun?
That's pretty huge.
So I want to say that's my bombshell news is that the cover is confusing.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't be that way.
Well, fun fact, they do have new covers now for all the new books.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I was perusing the rabbit hole of YouTube the other day, And there's like tons of covers for all the Brandon Sanderson books.
Oh, there's like European covers.
Yeah.
That look awesome. They're always like black and white. Like
yeah, I saw the
thing.
black and white one.
Yeah.
I'm like, for like Way of Kings, they have different ones. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different covers for these books.
Yes.
Which leads me to believe that an author must not just contract with one person. Like maybe they create separate editions with different artists.
Yeah.
How does that work? Do you know?
I don't, but I would guess that it's because the cultures are so different, like across like different countries. And so they're looking for marketing material for the cover that will resonate more with like one kind of culture versus another.
A lot of people judge books by covers. So
I know, which is...
Do you think
it's
that
funny.
happens in like a royalty? Like, oh, I'm an author, so here's my book, and then you're an artist, so here's your art, and let's put it together, and we're both going to take some sort of royalty off of it, or does the author just buy the cover from the artist?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
That is the one I'm going to
I
look
bet there's
up.
a mix. Like,
We'll see if I can look it up faster than somebody can comment if I remember.
yeah.
That's an interesting one. I'm curious about that because there are so many different covers, and that was one thing that I noticed.
Did you see the new covers for the Mistborn books?
No,
They-
the second series or the first one?
They're for both of them. Mistborn book covers. They're almost a little bit more. Here they are.
No chance I remember to put this up on the screen in the edit. So
I know, right?
everyone just look it up and just imagine that you're looking at it at the same time as us.
Oh man, it's gonna go there. But anyways, see, this is like the new Mistborn cover.
Okay,
which is
I like
great.
that.
I think they did the same thing. Here's like another one for Shadows of Self. That's the next book we'll be
Oh
reading.
man,
So, anyways,
what has he
there's
got
a
around
lot-
him? Is that his mist cloak or is that some random like?
Here's the alloy Vlaw.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love the style of it. I think it's.
But then they've
it's
got
great.
like these.
Yeah,
with like
those ones, the black and white ones.
Yeah, it's cool. It's
Yeah.
cool. I like that they do
Very,
that.
very cool. I love the difference.
You get different details from each one, but from this one you just get confused.
Yeah, I know. It's just wrong.
You don't know who's who.
And honestly, I don't really like that cover too. Wax looks nothing like I imagine him in the book.
I think in the and
I do not like his
Wayne looks,
greasy hair in this. Like,
Yeah.
like, dude, like you're really. Like,
Wayne
literally
looks
like
too
a-
devious, and he's not devious.
No.
He's like he's fun. You know, he's happy-go-lucky. He's
Yep.
hilarious.
He also does not look old enough. Wax.
He's
does
in
not
his
look old.
40s.
Yeah,
which is also a cool element to Brandon Sanderson's books. Like he has heroes that are older.
Yep.
They're not all like 18 and 19-year-old heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's way cool. He's had a whole career. Okay, so I love the book overall, but this is not our official review.
No, it's
I
not.
want to mention that early in the podcast.
You will have to go for a later video that we'll be doing specifically reviewing.
It'll be on the YouTube channel, probably on the podcast too, but that'll be our review, our actual like number rating and all the good stuff.
I have to ask you though. So this book literally starts with a bang. What did you think about that opening chapter?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's why this is a 2-person podcast because I wrote that down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was not ready for that scene.
Wasn't
And
that
I
insane?
stand by that. It will affect my review.
Really? You
Yes.
didn't like that?
I did not like it.
I loved that
I
opening.
did not like it.
Why didn't you like it?
I was not ready. I didn't know the characters well enough. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't really understand like the dynamic between Wax and Leslie, or is Leslie? Mm-hmm. I wasn't ready for it. At the end, I was kind of just like, oh, that was odd, like kind of, heart-wrenching, I guess, but weird.
But it was.
I was not ready for it.
For me, it was crazy.
But this is the second time you read it.
I loved it the first time that I read it.
Okay.
Very first time, I'm like, what an opening to a book.
Crazy opening. But I just wasn't ready for it.
For me, it was heart-wrenching. All the things you said it wasn't, it was for me.
I said it was heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
I agree that it was heart-wrenching. But it just wasn't as impactful because I feel like I was almost numb to what was going on.
Yeah, which I don't think it was supposed to be like a major, like this is the biggest moment of the book.
But it felt that way. So this is the nuance,
Yeah, okay.
right? You go into it, and the lead up and the build up and the description of the scene and how intense everything is makes you feel like it's a huge moment in the book, but you just don't get it.
But which is awesome because it is a huge moment for Wax. I don't know why I get those two mixed up so much.
It is a huge moment for Wax as far as his character building, but you're like trying to remember stuff because you're like, okay, this is important. It's obviously like a big deal. Like what was the villain's name? All this stuff, but you're like, it never comes up again.
Yep.
It's just a throwaway scene that's just supposed to build up the character of Wax and why he's a little bit broken.
Yep.
I don't know.
I loved it.
On the
I thought it
fence,
was great.
On the fence. It's going to go in my review. It will be discussed in that video, and it will affect my rating. But
Yeah.
I overall really good book. I think it's fun to go into it knowing about the world, but also kind of just having a fun Sherlock Holmes story. I think it was cool.
Yeah, I loved all of that. Wayne, tell me about like your experience with Wayne having such a crazy, like, hilarious character. Did you think he was hilarious?
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was so
awesome.
funny.
He was the best. Yeah, it's fun to have the guy that's just along for the ride, making things funny. His trades, like, like, oh, it's not even a big deal. I traded him for it.
Like, it was a good hat.
Yeah, he like trading for like pictures he's drawn. Yeah, he's a kleptomaniac, but he's also trading little trinkets as he steals stuff.
So. Oh yeah, I love Wayne. I love all of the just the quotes that he has. I've said this before, but Sanderson, this is the character that Sanderson literally has a book of Wayne quotes that he has, come up with. Yeah, as he just thinks about them throughout his life, he's like, okay, this could be a Wayne quote, and he writes it down and he finds a place to insert it.
So he just lives with all of these characters in his mind.
He must,
then as
right?
he experiences life, he's like, how would this person react? How would this person react? Like, I want another Wit quote. I need another Wayne quote. Like he just pulls these things out of nowhere and writes them down. I think it's cool. I'm glad he's doing it. It makes the books better.
Do you feel like Wayne feels like that character from Way of Kings that is also pretty funny, Lopin? Like, do you think he feels... So, in some ways, I'm like, do they feel too similar of a character?
I don't think so.
And then I realize, I don't think they do. Like,
I think Wayne is much more capable than Lopin.
Mm-hmm.
Not that Lopin's, like, a bad character, but I just think he's not like a force. You know, he's an entity, he's fun, he's, like, making jokes, and he's confident in himself, which is awesome. But... Wayne is like actually battle ready.
Yeah.
And he has those capabilities. He has a healing power. He's like really good with his dueling canes and his speed bubbles. Like he's jumping around and beating people up. He's doing really well. So he's a little bit more of a force, I think, to be reckoned with.
And that actually reminds me, what did you think about the new Mistborn abilities, like such as a speed bubble and adding... Like,
crazy. But I also really liked that they explained it well. They talked about how alloys work. They're like, look, okay, yeah, it's an alloy, so it's kind of like aluminum, but it's also completely different.
Yep.
Like when you create an alloy... he explains, like, well, steel is basically just an alloy of iron with a little bit of carbon in it. Like, okay, makes sense, but completely different for allomantic capabilities.
Yep.
So I thought it was cool. I think it's going to be fun to see what they do with the next era of Mistborn, or even in this series if they keep adding to it.
I didn't know how to feel about it at first because I'm like, this is like a completely different metal. Like, why wasn't this in the original books and everything? But there were metals that they hadn't discovered in the original books, right?
They knew about aluminum.
Yeah, but aluminum doesn't do the bubbles.
No, aluminum takes away all your romantic powers. But the iron eyes. No, I'm just thinking about him that way. But whatever they call him.
Marsh.
Marsh. But I'm saying what they were called.
Oh, Steel Inquisitors.
Yeah. The Inquisitors. They used aluminum.
You're right. Yeah.
They forced people to burn aluminum.
To have aluminum.
So they had that, but they didn't have the speed bubbles. Obviously, like chromium is what she burns to get her. I guess it's not alert to her abilities. I thought it was.
Yeah.
But that's what she burns, and he burns. What was it called? It's not a metal name.
No, I can't remember what that name was.
It's bend alloy, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah, there's another name for it. I can't remember what it was, but they do call it band alloy as well.
That's what I remember. I'm being like, why can't they have like a metal name for it?
I know. Yeah, I didn't know how to feel about it at first because like I like that they're expanding the worlds and everything, but I couldn't decide if that was a change from the original books that he wanted to have like oh, let's add another metal that makes things like even cooler, but it's got to be one of the 16, right? Because there was only 16 metals that in the first place. Remember 16 is like the big golden number.
It's a big number. Well, the last book is called The Lost Metal. So something interesting is going to happen about metals over the course of these 4 books. I'm expecting that for sure.
Well, I was thinking that, but I was also wondering like if it was, so this is where it's really fun is all the connections to the original books. So clearly you must have caught all the names of the cities. Like for me, when I read this book, it just like made me smile every single time. I'm like Ellendale and what do they say? Dachshund Station or whatever. Or
yeah. And they talk about the survivor. They talk about the ascendant warrior. And you're like, wait a second. I know these people. I know their story. It's so cool.
Yeah, and it's cool to like hear that legend become legend when you know it's like history for the time.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
One of the things that I loved most was Sazed's little comments in
Oh
there.
man, yeah. So he's Harmony, right?
Yeah.
And when he first talks about like whenever you pray or do something important, you have to put this earring in. I'm like, whoa, I know what's going on here.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
I'm like, wait, that's Sazed.
Yeah,
He's involved.
Yes.
But I liked his comments and his commentary. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. That's what I wanted to hear.
He
from
jumps
you.
in. He just like straight up answers people, like responds to them.
Yeah. And he even uses his little phrases like "I think," like, and so it just sounds like Sazed.
And they did a good job of keeping the voice the same. I mean, Michael Kramer does great at what he does.
Yes,
but I love that they kept the voice because I'm like, oh, you just recognize him, and that's cool.
And this is the parts that I actually, Sanderson, I feel like does a really good job at evaluating religion and faith, as he is a religious person himself. And in this moment, he has lots of times throughout the book where Wax is in these moments where he's like, I'm talking to God, and I don't really know if if he can hear me, if I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah.
And then he like is sending feelings to him, but we know. So he's like, I don't know if that's just myself making those up, or if it's or if I'm actually hearing from him. But what's cool is we know he is hearing something because of the earring and like the types of things that he's like saying.
And he thinks it's just a superstition. He's like, hey, you just kind of put the earring in, I don't know. And he doesn't understand why, which is weird.
Yep.
But I guess some knowledge has just been lost. But they also have divided. They've fractured the religion.
Yep. Because
they have like the path is one way. Like you could be a survivorist. Like all these different things where you're kind of taking those ideals from Mistborn, like what different people believed, and now it's become entire factions of religion.
But is that not so much like religion
today?
Where
it's a
people
great parallel.
Well, yeah, where people will be praying, and you're just, as you were saying, like you don't know why you're doing what you're doing.
Sure,
but like if you had been way back in the beginning when things started with Harmony or like real life or whatever, you would understand a lot more the
but then
reality
it becomes fractured and diluted and changed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and then you lose the meaning of it, and you just go through the motions. And I thought he just does a very, very good job in his books at like conveying that.
It's all logical in the beginning, and then by the end, it's like just tradition. You're like, I don't know why I do the earring thing, but I do it. Whereas at the beginning, like, yeah, it's obvious because the spike and all this like, hemalurgic spikes and how all those work and connection to blood. That's why you can't bend or can't interact with metal that's touched the blood, or at least really, really difficult. All those things. But is there no Mistborn then?
No. Oh,
at all?
So this is another thing I want to talk to you. There are no such thing in Mistborns anymore. And I don't know, I can't remember why.
Because that's one thing that blew me away.
Do you know who the Lord Mistborn is?
The Lord Mistborn?
They talk about him. I've mentioned him a few times in the book. Like the Lord Mistborn created the city and like drew up the plans, and he wrote.
Would it be Ellen then?
No, it isn't.
Who is it?
It's Spook. Yeah, they read one of his quotes at one point, and they're like, oh, that's an old like Empire tongue or whatever. And it's like wuzzing the was.
Okay, I know what you mean now. Because they're like, oh, it's like the ancient tongue. I'm like, that's kind of a weird ancient tongue.
Did you forget that was
It sounds
Spook's
a lot
thing?
like the slang. I did not remember it was Spooks, but I'm like, it sounds familiar, but it's just weird that would be their ancient tongue.
Yes. And it's been a while since you've read the first ones.
It's been a while.
The first ones end where Sazed says that he's made Spook into a Mistborn.
Oh,
yeah, which is very cool.
That is pretty cool.
So that's where
he's Lord Mistborn.
He's the Lord Mistborn.
That's hilarious.
I know.
And you know these people. I like the fact that they connect so well to like that past. I think that's really cool.
Oh yeah, super cool. And so now there are only you can
have one elementic ability.
You can have one elementic ability, one ferrochemical ability, or one of each, which makes you twinborn.
Yep.
And
which Wax and Wayne both are
twinborn. Yep. Which is fascinating because this gives us for the first time way more insight into why the Lord Ruler was basically a god.
And that's you talk about that with Miles, right? Where he had gold and gold, so he could do both.
Yeah, and if you put it together, the Lord Ruler, he had all 10 or 16 Mistborn abilities, plus all the ferrochemical abilities.
He was Mistborn and ferrochemist. But
to a full capacity.
The ferrochemists back in the day, in the first Mistborn, had all the ferrochemical abilities, didn't they? They had copper mines. They had the steel. Couldn't they do all of those things?
I don't know.
I don't think they were limited to one.
They might have been. I'm not sure. It's a good question.
I'm trying to remember now, but I honestly think, maybe the commenters will give us more insights.
Either way, though, it means that everything that Miles was able to do, the Lord Ruler could do. And you saw it in action when he had a spear thrown in his face when he was confronting Kelsier and didn't even stop him. And he kept on walking. And how he's able to be young forever because he can store old age. But then he's able to compound in that by burning the metals.
Yeah, it makes sense now.
He's basically
how
immortal. Like it's
incredible that Vin was able to take him out.
Yeah. And so now on this day, like in the current time of this book, is basically you have a bunch of mini Lord Rulers running around with having ferrochemical and elemental
severely
powers.
limited, because like even Miles, like he's immortal, but I mean if you could tie him down, you can kill him. It's like it's not anything unique.
And I think it's implied that Harmony did it, like is the one who caused that to be where you can
which
only
I think
have
makes a lot of
one
sense.
of each.
I'm glad that Sazes decided to do that.
Yeah, he was thinking about that.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
But the fact that there aren't any Mistborns did surprise me a little.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Should be fun. Should be fun to see what happens in the next. There's 4 books in this series, right?
Yep. So this book was originally intended to be a standalone book. But he had a lot of fun writing this book, and so as he was writing it...
That's a pattern for Brandon Sanderson.
I know, right? It was going to be a short story, and he's like, this has been so much fun, I'm going to turn it into its own era of Mistborn.
Wow.
And so that's why it feels so different from his other books, is because it was never intended to be its own series.
So I wonder if that will change when we get into book 2. I wonder if it'll be more like, okay, now it's established, he knows he's going to be writing for a long time.
I'll tell you that it doesn't change the tone. The book. It's all a lot of fun. Like the whole way, all 4 books are like that. But it doesn't ever get as deep as the other Mistborn books. But I think, like I said, it's because of that beginning thing. And a lot of people have problems with that. And it didn't seem like you had a problem with that.
No,
like,
I liked it.
Some people were really bothered. Like, I just didn't like this book. I'm like, well, it's a different book.
I like that it's different. You can't read the same, like... We've read more books in the last 3 months than we've read, at least personally, than I've read probably in the last year.
I know.
We cruised through books. We read Alloy of Law in the last week. Yeah. So, yeah, we're flying through books, so it is nice to have something a little bit different. I almost want to go back into, like, nonfiction for a second.
I know.
Because we're just cruising through everything. But it is a nice change of pace. And I like the fact that it's still Brandon Sanderson. You can see his style connecting random things from page 1 to the very end of the book. Really cool.
Yep. So what did you think about the very end of the book?
The very end of the book?
Yes. So there are 2 main events that happen at the end of the book. First of all, with Miles. Mm-hmm. So first of all, this is a big clarifier. I'm not spoiling anything for the rest of the books. I will tell you what I thought when I first read these books. Okay. Good. I was super fascinated by what was coming out of like Miles's mouth as he was being executed. Mm-hmm. First of all, crazy scene. He's up with a firing squad that has to shoot him again and
4
again.
times.
Again.
Yep.
Yeah. And now he's dead. Like the guy is insane. But then he just starts like saying like something about Trell. I think he's like worship like the god of Trell. Or, oh man, he says something about that. Like, you'll have to go back and listen to it.
Back, yeah.
But when I remember reading that part, and then I was re-listening to the original books with my wife, and Trell, that religion, is discussed with Sazed when he's going through his religion and stuff.
Okay.
And so he's like, the warriors of red and gold will come or something like that. He warns everyone as he's dying about like, Trell. Like you missed it.
I missed that part for sure.
It's fascinating. But then after that, you also run into...
Wax meets his dad.
Yes, that's also huge.
That's pretty huge.
Also huge.
I thought that's what we were going to talk about.
Did you see that coming?
No, absolutely not. Like the man in the suit's his dad. He's like, yeah, I knew it was you.
I know.
Like, as soon as I heard it was a guy in a suit, I'm like, that's my dad.
Yeah, it's actually his uncle.
His uncle.
Yes,
Sorry.
His
uncle, but the previous lord of the house. So I guess that's why I was confused.
Yeah, that was insane. It was funny, though, because as I was rereading this, the whole time I'm like, it is super clear that it is his uncle. The whole time.
Really?
Yeah, well, it's good. His butler, and, like, Wax says all the things on why
he explains it at the end, but I didn't catch it at
the
end.
And he dies, like, on, like, such a, like, random time. It's just, like, where, like, his carriage goes, like, crazy, and, like, Wax never gets to see the body. Do you remember that's how...
Yeah, they told the story, but they told the story while they were in the carriage. And I'm like, you guys insane?
I know.
They're like leaving from the butler, and they're like, how'd your uncle and sister die? He's like, oh, a carriage went crazy. And they're sitting in a carriage and not thinking, maybe we should get out.
He's like, I should have been more crushed by it. Wayne's like, it sounds like there was enough crushing already.
Enough people got crushed in that story.
I love it.
Yeah.
He just gives him a flat stare.
But you're right. It's one of those things where they're just assumed dead. Like, oh, that's sketchy.
Where did I hear this quote the other day? I can't remember what it was from, but it's like, never trust that someone's dead without seeing until you see a body.
Well, that sounds really familiar. Was it in the book?
Maybe it was in the book. It's probably in the book, dude. We've been doing so much recently.
Yeah, we've been reading a lot.
I feel like it could have been in a movie too,
but it would have been a movie we both saw because I definitely remember hearing that.
It's just something that's so like clear. Like I always feel the same exact way. Whenever I watch a TV show or a movie, no, they're not dead until I've seen the body, and especially if it's a main character, they're also not dead until I've seen flashback scenes of their life, the whole episode and stuff, and like just like a whole memory going away episode. I watched The Blacklist for a while.
Oh, that'll get you.
Yep. I knew when a character was going to die in an episode based on the beginning of the episode to the end. I'm like, oh, they're dead.
Flashback.
This is a flashback memory, like goodbye episode. I'm like, they're going to kill this person.
They have some powerful goodbyes in that.
They do.
That show.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
That is good. But anyways, that was crazy. The other part though was meeting Iron Eyes.
Yes. Yeah. Marsh.
There was a lot of fun things at the end there, I thought, but.
What did he give her? It was a book, right?
A book. And we don't know what's in the book yet.
I love the part that she's like, what? Why didn't you just give it to Wax? He's like, because he probably would have shot me. It just seems so raw. He's just like, it's not cryptic. He's like, because he would have shot me. I don't want to go to him.
I know. Don't you love it too that like all the lore has changed to be like well, when you die and see old Iron Eyes, like he's like known as like the devil almost.
Yeah, and he's just a guy. He's just Marsh cruising around.
Marsh, and everyone just like he's the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, he's death incarnate. Yeah. It's pretty funny, but I like that he's involved. I also like that Sazed is involved. I think that's cool that they're really trying to shape the world because Sazed, now that he is Harmony and the combination of preservation and ruin, has a lot more impact on making sure the world survives and thrives and grows and all that stuff. Yeah. I wonder if that will have a key impact to how the Ghostbloods are created and formed.
Oh, man. But I cannot wait to get to some of the later books of that. So have more discussions.
I'm still like crying laughing from Marsh because I just thought that part was so funny. I laughed so hard. He's like, he probably put a bullet in my head. I'm not going to talk to him. You give him the book.
I know. I think in the next book, we're going to have to start keeping track of our favorite quotes of the book. And we'll do a top 5 favorite quotes from the book.
Yeah. Or, we should do like a Who Said It.
Yeah, Who Said It would be hilarious too.
We should try it.
It'd be easy though. I feel like it'd be pretty clear to say.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, maybe it'd be fun.
I would enjoy it. I'd probably get a couple of them wrong because I feel like I read the whole book or listen to the whole book, and then I get here and I'm like, what was that person's name again? Yeah. I was convinced that Marcy does her thing as a lurcher, and now I'm like, now I don't know anything.
I do not think.
Does it start with an L at least?
I was just thinking like, okay, I got to remember that lurcher means like you're being like brought towards something, and so it's like being pulled.
I thought they were just called coin shots.
No, coin shots are the ones that push.
I thought they were both coin shots.
No, because you can't shoot like a coin by pulling it.
Yeah, if you shoot someone behind you.
Wait, what is this, Tenet? Like pulling it out of the
Speaking of Tenet.
Oh, yes.
What a transition.
This is a great transition. Did not do that on purpose.
That's what we're going to tell people. But I thought, and we're changing topics a little. I'll try and put chapters in this episode. I'll do my best. But when I first saw Tenet, and I think when you saw Tenet too, I feel like it kind of put a damper on the Christopher Nolan thing for me.
Really? Yeah. It was that bad for you?
I didn't say it was that bad, but Christopher Nolan's reputation was that high that when I saw Tenet, I was like, they almost are trying too hard to confuse people. Okay. Like, they're not trying to make it confusing as like a web of story. They're just making it confusing as confusing.
I don't know, dude.
What about Oppenheimer?
I disagree with most people on the internet about Tenet. And most people that I talk to.
Do they say what I'm saying?
Most people agree with you. Say? Nobody likes Tenet that I talk to. I really liked Tenet. I thought it was a great movie.
I didn't say I didn't like it. Yeah. I enjoyed the movie. I think Christopher Nolan's a great director. I just think it was confusing for confusing's sake.
I don't think so. Complex. I think the reason why it was confusing is because of the audio. And I'll give anyone that. The audio was almost like inaudible. Like you could not hear it at all.
It's one of those where the action scenes are so loud and then the voices are so quiet.
And they like talk like just like they're masked the whole time. But like it was still such a great movie because I love the time switches that he does. It does take several times to watch the movie to like understand it. Yeah. But like even the first time that I watched it, I was like, just with any other Christopher Nolan movie, I'm like, okay, I understand that there's a bigger picture here, and this
Yeah.
movie is meant to be enjoyed like on another like level too. So
That's fair.
anyways, I liked it.
And then going into Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
which you just saw, I have not seen, so I'm very curious to hear how it went for you.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It has did you see Dunkirk? Have you seen that one?
No,
Is that
seems too sad.
Oh, okay. Is that really why you haven't seen it?
Yeah.
I would say it's more on those lines because it's like a historical like movie, like very historical movie. Dunkirk is fascinating because that whole movie it's very artistic in a way. Like there's hardly any like conversations at all in that movie. It's almost all music and scenes.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it from different perspectives and everything. And that was like one thing I wasn't a huge fan of. That's why it was nice to get back to Tenet, where it was like more like almost like an Inception type movie.
It, but
yeah, I know. And then Oppenheimer, though, I think went a little bit back to the historical idea. I will say I liked the movie. I think some of it went over my head because I didn't know the incomplete story of what was going on, and you have to kind of put it together. I wish I had known. This is like a minor spoiler for the movie, but I wish I had known this going into it anyways.
Isn't history a spoiler for the movie?
Exactly. That's why I'm like, it's not a big deal. But the whole idea of this movie...
It blows up in the end.
Yeah, it's actually not in the end because that's where...
I guess I haven't seen it.
I know. But this whole movie is based around Oppenheimer's... he's like having a trial, per se, like years after the explosion happened, by a senator who is running, or not running, but he's going to be appointed to be in the cabinet of the presidency. Mm-hmm. And he has put together this trial against Oppenheimer because he doesn't like Oppenheimer. And he wants to get rid of his security credentials. And so the whole movie starts with him at this trial, like at this interview with all these people in this like back room where he is getting highly scrutinized on his whole life and like all of his connections and everything. And so as that's happening, you're jumping back to those scenes in his life, and it goes forward to that and meets together in that point. Again, Christopher Nolan loves dueling time like stuff and anything with time. But it was good. It was
say overall, what was your impression of it? Would you recommend it? Is it one you have to watch a couple of times?
I'd recommend it. I think it probably will win Best Picture this year.
Really?
There weren't that many good movies that came out this year.
I say that every year, and it always comes out with Best Picture being some movie no one's ever seen.
I know. That's just the Hollywood guys. Like,
it doesn't make any sense to me.
It's the worst.
Every time I'm like, I never even heard of that movie coming out. They're like, yeah, Best Picture, Best everything, best in the world.
Everyone's got to see it.
You're like, no one's seen it.
Nobody cares. No, it was a good movie. I think other things that may have gone over my head a little bit was the science part of it. Like they go through it really fast, and like they're talking about different ideas and everything.
Did you watch it by yourself?
Luckily, I paused it and talked to my wife.
I was going to say, your wife is a scientist.
Major. It was the best. I will say that is the best thing about watching it, was watching it with my wife, because I paused and like, what in the world are they talking about right there? I did finance. I did not have anything to do with nuclear chemistry and like physics.
I bet that'd be pretty cool. Did she have some good insights?
Oh yeah, she thought it was so cool, like super fascinating.
That's awesome.
But what was really cool about the movie is it just really, like the best historical movies, is it really gives you a sense for the time period and what people were so like all the controversies of the time, right? You get
cool. Yeah.
A big feel for the political controversies and like why it was such a big deal that Oppenheimer was being accused at the time and what he was being accused for, but then also how the scientists felt at the same time about building the bomb and like when it went off at Hiroshima and all these things.
It's so interesting to see, because when you look back at history, when you look back at these things, watch a movie, read a history textbook, all that stuff, it's so cut and dry. Stuff either happened or it didn't. Decisions were made. And you can just look back on it. You know, you reflect on that. But you never get the context of confusion. Where like, people just don't know what to do. Like, they don't know what the next step is. They don't know if this is going to work. They don't know any of that stuff. There's confusion. There's people on both sides. There's misinformation everywhere. But like, leading up to a decision, we deal with that every day, you know, in the political environment right now. Where it's like, decisions, everyone's on different sides. No one has the complete picture. Everyone's arguing about stuff. And you're like, We need to come to decisions.
And so actually there's a book that Christopher Nolan's movie is based off of. He actually was inspired by the book. I think it's called American Prometheus. And it's a biography on Oppenheimer and his life. And
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And this is kind of like why I like books like this is biographies. I might actually have to read this one because I'm just so fascinated by the story. But books like the Steve Jobs book, I feel like Shoe Dog was kind of a memoir more of Phil Knight. But hearing their backgrounds and their stories on why they did things and realizing that people aren't just like good or bad, I just love that. And the movie just does a really good job of conveying that, because you get to the end of it and you kind of realize that Oppenheimer, you don't really know how to feel about him. Like, he's got the sense of him is like he's not really good to his family, and he is has a lot of like controversial things that go on in his life, but he was also a brilliant scientist that really moved physics and science in a really huge direction for the world. It's just crazy.
And that often happens. I feel like when you look at, you mentioned biographies a lot. It's just people, you look back and you're like, oh, that was a bad person. That was a good person. Like,
yep.
Oftentimes when you go into that context, people are just, they're complicated. Everyone's just got their own dueling elements of life, and life's difficult for everybody and figuring things out. Obviously, some people make some very bad decisions.
Yeah, of course.
But I just think it's interesting. The context makes such a difference. And it surprises me to hear that Oppenheimer is also based off a book. Makes it sound like every single movie that comes out these days is based off of a book. But
I know, dude, it feels like that these days.
It does. It really does. It feels like lazy.
But for me, it really does make it me feel like I feel like some of the best movies are based off of books, and I feel like it just gives such a great excuse for the writers and the directors and the producers to just know, hey, this is a story that works. Let's run with it and really base our movie off of story instead of explosions and visual effects. And like, because that I don't know what's up with producers, but for some reason they just feel like the only thing people want to see in a movie is just something cool. Explosions. I'm like, no, I don't. Like I almost fell asleep. I think it was like back in the day when people used to watch Transformers.
Oh man,
I know, dude. When I remember watching the first one, and then like I can't remember if it was on the second or third one. I'm like, I almost fell asleep during the movie, and it was like a bunch of explosions and stuff was going on. I'm like, I am so bored.
You know what I wonder? I think this is an interesting topic of conversation.
Yeah,
because I completely agree with you.
Yep.
And it's like when you build entertainment for the masses, it almost tends toward that. Like, think about this. Mm-hmm. What are the biggest channels on YouTube?
Ours. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
BookTube.
Calling your shot right there.
No, it's I mean,
as
it's
far
Mr.
as
Beast
right now at least.
Well, I'm fishing.
Yeah,
so are you looking for the Mr. Beast?
It's Mr. Beast.
Mark Rober.
Like PewDiePie. Not even Mark Rober.
Mark Rober is pretty massive.
He is pretty big, but he's not one of the biggest.
Oh wow.
But so let's put him in the same category.
Jaden knows his YouTubers. We're about to get all of his YouTube knowledge here.
We spent some time on YouTube. You start to learn like, okay, what's going well for people. What's obviously when you join YouTube, right? You want to grow as a YouTube channel, and I think probably by the time this video comes out, we might be at 500 subscribers, which is pretty freaking fantastic all on its own.
Massive. One of the biggest on YouTube.
Technically, we're on the list. But okay.
Not sure if it's at the bottom or the top. I'm not gonna say.
When we go back and just look at the biggest, the very, very biggest, it's exactly like you're saying. It's quick cuts, explosions. It's like gotchas. Everything's happening all the time. Like it just makes you feel like they're planning for someone with the attention span of a fish. And it's just like, it's just so much going on. It's not a sit down. Like I tend to watch a lot of videos like these where they're sitting down, they're having a conversation, you're learning something, or maybe it's like instructional in some way. But the biggest channels, and they get the most watch time, the most views, the most subscribers, is entertainment for the masses. And entertainment for the masses tends toward like a TikTok style video where it's super, super fast and everything's happening all at the same time and trying to just hook someone in. And I think that's what people are doing with movies these days, to be fair.
Yes, but those die quick.
Yeah.
Right? They're not ever going to be something that's going to be massive and.
But you don't need it to be loved for the future. You need to get a huge box office. That's what they need.
For the money. But the thing is, though, I understand where you're going with this, and I understand why they're doing this. But
You don't have to like it.
No, I know. But I'm just saying, I don't think that provides the most long-term value.
I agree.
And that's why it's a terrible strategy to do that. And this is exactly what's happening with Marvel. You can see it in real time. The Marvel movies, they're only explosions and action scenes and witty comments and these things. But you know how fast that is tanking right now?
It's
like
tanking
nobody's
fast,
going
yeah.
at all.
But here's the thing that I will say. From a business perspective, you have to think about the fact that almost no business is planned for long-term value. It's just an inherent... You work in finance. You know that everyone's planning for the quarter. Everyone wants good quarterly earnings in their public company.
I will tell you that the people who are going for short-term earnings are the ones who they die the fastest and they will never survive. And the ones who the most valuable companies in the world are the ones who have gone for long-term value. Apple is the number one example of this. And I know this because I've read the Steve Jobs book, and he specifically talks about this in the book.
But if it's not a specific focus, you think about an entertainment company, what's the most important to them is getting the word out to the masses, a lot of people, which means flashy, box office success, news stories, news coverage, interviews. That doesn't happen for long-term success. You don't keep interviewing the cast of Avatar 20 years later, maybe a couple of interviews.
I would disagree with you. I think there are some other examples that, modern examples. Dune, I think, is the first example I can come up with where it's not a flashy boom, 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 quick movie, but it's still having massive success.
It had huge hype.
Yes, but
that's what I'm talking about.
I'm saying you can get hype without the boom, 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 quick succession of cuts and everything. You can make a quality movie, quality story, and it's going to be better for you in the long term than it is with these other things. Sure, you can make a quick buck right now with these movies, but if you destroy your long-term value, you're not going to get near as much riches in the end.
That's true.
And that's the goal of companies, right? Is to
technically
have those riches.
True. I totally agree that it's possible. I think I'm more saying on the regular, the more common, the easier is going for immediate value, and the reason for that is because it's not the company. The company does not create the movie. The director creates the movie. The director, his goal is to get a contract for his next movie.
Yep.
And you think about Brandon Sanderson's talked about this and the fact that he doesn't want to do this. The trick is to write a big movie and sign a big contract for 20 books and then write that for the rest of your career. That's what a director wants. So their goal is huge success, big box office. That's what they're directing for so that they can get a contract for their next movie. But some directors are not that way. And I completely agree.
Well,
in the majority of where we're going right now, it feels that way.
This is something that we've specifically talked about in my business school, about how this is where the incentives are misaligned.
They are.
From the shareholders versus the company owners.
I agree.
Because the company owners, the shareholders want long-term success, but the company owners want to
yearly bonuses.
Yeah, exactly. But they find the companies that are able to change it to align more with the shareholders for the long-term success end up with the richest companies in the world.
Yep.
And that is Apple to a T. And that's what happened when Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. He came back years later, and Apple had literally dozens and dozens of just tons and tons of different products. And because they were just going after the newest, flashiest thing, this would be cool, whatever, they were completely failing. The company was falling apart. And so that's when they came back to Steve Jobs, because they're like, listen, the company's about to die anyways, literally about to die. We need you to come back. First thing that Steve Jobs did is got rid of every single product except for 4. And he's like, these are the only ones we're doing. And they're like, what? Are you crazy? He's like, no, you guys are focusing on way too much crap. We just need to focus on these 4. And he just really put in the long-term value of these things. We're going to make a really good product, and that's what we care about. And we're just going to make it over and over again.
I agree. And that's why some people stand out. You think Steve Jobs obviously stands out in the business space. I think some directors also stand out for that reason because they're more focused on long-term value, better content, better story. And there are some directors that you just don't know. A movie will come out, have a huge box office, but then that director will just kind of fall off. You won't really hear from them again because they haven't made that impact. But I agree with you completely.
Another example of a movie that I loved, or show you have not seen, Stranger Things.
I have seen it. I've seen up to 2 or 3 seasons.
You've seen 3 seasons of Stranger Things? There's no way.
How many seasons are there?
There are 4.
Okay, then
4 or 5.
I've seen 2.5. Probably.
2.5.
I've seen partial into the 3rd season. I'm like, it's getting kind of a little weird and dark thriller for me. I don't know.
Jaden, you would have. I do not believe you. You would have loved it if you'd seen it.
I don't know. I barely made it through the second season.
The point of the story is like it's also not one of those stories that is like super like fast paced and explosions and all over the place, but like it's having
jump scares all over the place.
It's kind of, but like, but the whole point of this is that the people who have the most success in the long run are always the people who have like put actual quality into.
Completely agree. Yeah. Absolutely. That is all I'm saying is that the incentives are misaligned to not create long-term value.
Yes.
Even though you're totally right that long-term value is only created by focusing on
to their own detriment, though.
Yes.
Because them making this stuff puts them into like makes them obsolete. They're making themselves obsolete, which is Marvel to a T.
And if I was to bring it,
because before Marvel was successful, because the whole time you were building up to Thanos. You had a cool story.
It was
loved
awesome.
All the characters.
Living through that was the bomb.
Was the coolest thing ever. One of the best movie experiences ever. Like
every year you're like, oh man, the new Marvel movie, like the next epic in the story.
Now it's
cool.
Terrible, and I don't watch any Marvel movies except for Spider-Man because I love all of it.
I haven't even seen the most recent Spider-Man. But to bring it back,
which one?
I know. There's another multiverse.
Oh, you're talking about the animation ones.
Yeah, I haven't
seen. But you've seen all the live action ones with Tom Holland.
Totally.
Okay, cool.
Come on.
I haven't seen the most recent animation one yet either. That is on the list.
We'll have to put it on the podcast list for review. Okay, I want to bring it back though because it's exactly the same. You mentioned the long-term value means if they focus on short-term incentives, then they die faster. The exact same thing happens with YouTube channels.
Yep.
YouTube creators that focus on that flashy and just quick cuts and
that's how
short-term entertainment, all of it comes right back, and then the channels die so fast.
Yes.
Obviously, Mr. Beast is incredibly successful, and he's doing crazy things with YouTube right now, but think of all the channels that have existed and gone crazy. Think about like Vine and all those things that quick success and quick failure.
Yep, and the ones that stick around are the Joe Rogans.
Yeah, and he's not flashy.
He's not at all. He's a 3-hour-long podcast every single time.
How long is this one? We're creeping up on that at this point. No, I totally agree. Long-term value is a better goal, but is poorly incentivized right now.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, I'm dying to hear about your Dune theory. So we read Dune a week ago. Oh my gosh, we read through books so fast.
We're flying through books right now.
But Jaden was telling me afterwards, like, dude, I think I know why the worms chase like the thumpers and all of the sound machines. So I want to know.
So let me set the stage for you. I'm reading Dune. Okay.
Yes.
I'm very confused, and I like to stop and think about things sometimes, especially when I'm in the car. So I paused it, and I just kind of
pulled
drove
over.
in silence.
He stopped.
No, I drove.
No,
I
know.
continued driving.
Just checking. You said you stopped. Stop and think about things. Stop the book and stop the car. What is going on?
Middle of the lane. Like, everyone will understand.
I'm listening to Dune.
So I was like, you know what does not make sense to me is this whole like Arrakis situation and the desert and why like the worms. What's the deal with the worms? Like I don't get it. It's confusing. Obviously, I accept the fact that you can do weird stuff whenever you're building your own world. Yep. Frank Herbert can build random stuff into his world if he wants to. That's fine with me.
And apparently he does later in the books. Builds very weird things.
From what we've heard, like books 4, 5, and 6, it gets pretty wild.
Yeah.
But as far as this part, in book 1, which is all I've read,
yep.
The worms, the nuance to them is that they react very poorly to rhythmic sounds. And they attack and eat and just destroy anything that makes rhythms. I was like, that's kind of weird, right? It just doesn't make much logical sense to me. Like, how can I sort of liken that to something? And anyway, back in my past, I was a musician. And
very good musician.
Thank you. I was a violinist. I guess I still am, technically. And one of the things as I was practicing in one of the rehearsal rooms, you would hit a certain note, a really high note, but it would make the fan grates vibrate. It was so funny.
Did you just make you like you just could not stop laughing?
We got a huge kick out of that. It was the greatest thing ever. Greatest discovery of my generation. But it's called harmonic resonance or something like that. Yeah. Natural harmonic frequencies. So every thing, whatever, it's like a glass. Have you ever heard someone like break a glass with their voice?
I've never heard it, but I know of it in movies.
It's very possible, very doable, because you're amplifying that resonant frequency.
Have you seen someone do it before?
Not in person, but I've seen like
the way you phrase it. I'm like, have you ever seen someone? I'm like,
well, Dude Perfect did it as an example, like
his
a month
voice?
ago. Yeah. It's not necessarily like a super
high-
high voice or anything. It's just a specific pitch that you have to hit.
What?
So
I need to watch that.
it's actually pretty cool. So all to say
Yeah.
that like that frequency really, really affects the material. And every material will have a different natural frequency.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a very similar nuance to how the worms work, because the rhythm just affects them significantly. Like, as far as I can tell, they don't have eyes, they don't have like ears, I don't think. So they react to pressure, probably pressure or some other sort of interaction with the world around them. With the desert, they own the desert. They're like the top predator in the desert. So they're just in charge of the ecosystem, basically. But they react very poorly to anything that's rhythmic. I think it has to do relatively to like that pressure that affects them, because it will start to almost resonate with their bodies, and they just don't like that because they lose control.
Oh, interesting.
So my mind is like they lose their own, like, I guess when I say lose control, like you think about when someone loses control, they get all angry, get into a frenzy. I think it's the same thing. When the worms start to feel that rhythm that affects them, whether it's someone walking or a thumper or whatever, they can't handle it. It's like losing control. And I think trying to control the desert is what takes away the power of it. So the power of chaos is basically my whole theory. Is that the desert of Arrakis is a representation of the power of chaos. And the fact that when they went into that sandstorm, they only survived because they surrendered to the chaos.
Yeah.
If you try and fight and control the chaos, it will destroy you, which is exactly what it did to everyone else. And the only way they survived is like, we're accepting the chaos of the moment, the chaos of the storm, and allowing that chaos to play itself out, which is why Arrakis is so volatile. And I think one of the reasons why anytime it's tried to be tamed, it has reacted very poorly to that, whether by creating a people that would protect it, whether creating a maker or a worm that's going to destroy everything, whatever it needed to do to ensure that the chaos is protected inside of the desert. And I think that was a pretty interesting nuance.
Wow.
And then I got to my house and I had to do my chores and stuff. So then I forgot. But I wrote this down because I thought it was very interesting.
Because you were so inspired.
And it all started with like the why is the rhythm. So I'm very curious. Obviously, that's just my random theory. I really want to know if anyone else has a theory in the comments or wants to just DM us or something, because I want to know if you think similarly, if the harmonic resonance has anything to do with it. Maybe it's something later in the books that I just don't know. Maybe Frank Herbert has said something that I just haven't found. But I'm very curious to see what other people think.
Oh, that's super fascinating.
I'll just step off my soapbox.
I thought it was cool. I think it's very cool. The movie probably won't answer that question for you.
Highly unlikely.
I know.
That's fair.
I will have to say, I am so excited for that movie. Every single time like I think about it, I just can't wait. We're probably going to buy tickets like today or tomorrow for it.
We're going to need to.
We're going to need to,
we
so we can
prepared.
get freaking good seats.
We reacted to the
night.
trailer like last week. Yeah. And it was so much fun.
Yeah, it was so fun.
But we're pretty amped up. And it's like, what, 3 weeks away now?
Yeah. Everything about that trailer was just so exciting. Like it just feels like they're going to nail the book. I'm like, that's just so fun. You can never depend on that for a movie. So
that being said, I did see recently an interview from the Dune cast. And I kind of skimmed through the interview. And they play like clips from the movie. And
Did you watch the clips?
I watched part of it, then I turned it off. I'm like, whoa.
Don't spoil this.
I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I know.
It was the fight, the battle.
You saw clips of it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Like at the very end. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. What are you showing me that for? I don't want to see that.
I understand how people do that.
It was an interview with, Timothy Chalamet.
Yep.
And Austin Butler.
Uh-huh.
Who happened to play Paul Atreides and Fade Routha.
Ah, I thought so.
And I'm like, yeah, you can't be showing that. What are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
That's like one of the most pivotal scenes. And I'm just like, no, I'm disappointed. I'm just disappointed that I accidentally saw that interview. And I'm like, now I don't want to see any more Dune content on YouTube because I feel like it's going to spoil it for me.
I know, dude. It freaks me out. I had that problem when I was back in the day when the third Spider-Man movie came out. The one with like the original ones. What the freak is his name? What's his name?
Who are we talking about? The actor?
Yeah,
I don't know any actors' names.
Oh my goodness, why can't I remember it? It's camera brain. But anyways, I remember seeing a bunch of scenes for that third movie coming out and his fight between Green Goblin and everything. Oh. And then I went and saw the movie. I'm like, I've seen all this. I'm not even entertained anymore. So now I have a strict policy to not watch that kind of thing like ever again. I have to wait for all of it for the movie. I only watched like one trailer too because I don't want too many trailers.
It's a good call. So at the end of the day, it's one of those things where we have to wait, be patient, for the next couple of weeks, and then Dune comes out. We will definitely be doing a reaction video to that. I am like super excited for that.
Tobey Maguire. That is his name. I just remembered.
That's how this works.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, you may continue.
Congratulations. I'm glad you figured it out in the same episode.
I'm so proud of myself. It was killing me, dude.
It could have come out in like the next episode, and you would have just been like, I got it.
It's this.
So yes, we will be doing a reaction video to Dune, which will come out probably the night the movie premieres. We're really excited about that. And then there's just so much cool stuff coming out. So thanks for listening to the podcast. We always appreciate you guys. If you have any thoughts, comments, we love reading and responding to those. So please send them our way. But if you're not subscribed already, it is a really good time. Today is like the perfect day to do so.
Yeah, good day. It's a great day.
Well, with that, have a good one, and we'll see you in the next one.